Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Company Policies. I worked for a grocery store in Australia for close to a decade. It wasn't terrible, and management treated us with respect for my first few years there. If someone couldn't make a shift, they'd work with us to find a replacement. We were rarely short-staffed, so in the worst-case scenario, things would still run relatively smoothly, even if we were missing a few on a given day. Fast forward a few years. The good manager retires, and an assistant manager from a nearby store is promoted to managing the store. Let's call him Brad. Brad approached the position with an ego, treating the store as his to fix, even though things had been running quite smoothly for years before he was in the picture. Part of his vision of fixing the store was stricter adherence to company-wide guidelines in terms of staffing numbers and leave requests. For example, the amount of staff to be rostered on is determined by the number of customers through our doors each day. Staff who were actually experienced at this location knew that we needed more than what the company guidelines specified to be able to function effectively. Within the first month of Brad's tenure at the store, hours are being cut dramatically across the store, causing chaos as nobody was used to the added workload. When confronted about this by other members of management, he immediately dismisses them, quoting company guidelines. During the same period of time, staff began to notice that any request for leave was being instantly denied by Brad. Now, the company guideline is to give at least 2 weeks notice if you know you'll need a day off. But it goes without saying, sometimes friends or family will make last-minute plans you'd like to attend, or you can't work a shift due to compassionate reasons. Prior to Brad, if you needed some time off, it was as simple as honestly communicating your situation with our manager. Almost always we were able to come up with a solution, and taking a day off was never a big deal. Keep in mind, these guidelines are just that, guidelines, not strict rules that must be enforced. Store managers are given a rather loose collar from higher management. As long as things are running smoothly and the staff is happy, upper management will usually take a rather hands-off approach. They won't micromanage each individual store, ensuring every little corporate guideline is being adhered to, unless there are obvious issues requiring their attention. So now Brad is about a month into his position, and we are short-staffed throughout the store. Everyone is stressed. Requests for leave are being denied due to the lack of staff that Brad caused in the first place. And Brad quotes company policy each and every time he does this. He won't even allow us to organize someone else to cover shifts, as it's too much paperwork. It's a Saturday, and I'm due to work my regular shift that same night. I get a call from a friend with a spare ticket to see my favorite artist's sold-out show. I want to go, and I've spoken to a colleague who's willing to cover my shift, so I'm not screwing over my team. I call the store and I speak to Brad. I tell him the situation and that I have someone to cover said shift. Brad predictably gives me the same response that he's been given everyone else. Sorry, as per staffing policy, you must give 2 weeks notice for any time off. It doesn't matter if someone else is willing to make the shift. For a manager who's into following rules, I was surprised to discover that he never took into account the sick leave policy. Staff is entitled to paid sick leave for a day without a requirement of a doctor's note. If you take 2 days or more off consecutively, then you need a medical certificate. I call back an hour after my initial call. This time I tell Brad that I've come down with the most terrible headache and that there's no way I can work that night. I can faintly hear him angrily mumble that he will have to call in a last-minute replacement before hanging up. It didn't take long for staff to catch on to this loophole. Staff needing time off with less than 2 weeks notice would no longer bring it to their manager's attention immediately, instead opting to call in sick the day off each time. Obviously, this ensured further chaos in terms of lack of staff, a problem I never experienced in my near decade at the store. Brad quit after about a month and a half of being the manager. Replacing him was the old assistant manager that has been at this location for several years at this point. It took a while to reverse the damage Brad had caused, but things got back to normal with someone who actually knew how to run the store at the helm. The next story is called Everything Twice. I work as a surveyor. In this profession, you often have to divide land so that the owner can sell a part of it, or even delimit the entire perimeter or just a part of it. For example, when 2 neighbors are fighting about where each of their lands ends. Usually, we would make our own research beforehand and often find some previously existing landmarks, property documents and stuff like that. Then get to the land on the day we appointed with everyone concerned and measure visible limits and landmarks. And if everything is clear enough, establish the limit for everyone on their accord. Meaning that you have only one travel on the spot, and the rest is just drawing the plan on a computer and creating legal documents to sign by everyone quoted before. It works perfectly, like 95% of the time. The remaining 5% are either because we made a mistake and need to come back to change the limit with everyone's accord again, or because one of the neighbors doesn't agree with what we determined to be the limit and wants to go to court to have it settled by a judge. This is between the two neighbors, and we have about nothing to do with it once they decide to go to that extent. Sometimes though, the limit is not that easy to find and we have to do it in 2 appointments. It works well, and it is fast enough so that we can pass from one case to the other without losing too much time. But here's the thing. With 2 appointments, clients have to pay more. Of course. And our boss likes that. One day he decided that rather than doing everything at once when we could, we would systematically do it in 2 appointments. We tried telling him that it was a bad idea, as we were already treating every case we had with just no delay. But he didn't listen and made us do it anyway. So we started doing as he said. Every case, even the easiest one, was treated 2 times. The folder started to pile up on our desk because we had to go to each location a second time. But we also had to attend to the appointments of the new ones, which themselves had to be taken care of a second time, while others were coming, etc, etc. Now clients are calling angrier and angrier, because they are waiting for our work to be done, so that they can sell their lands. The boss came at us angry, because he thought we were slacking off. But we just showed him the folders that we have to get treated. Twice. He tried to argue, claiming that we were just taking too much time. But we reminded him that he was warned this would happen. He got one really angry call from a notary last week, who was about to lose our sale because we didn't work fast enough. At this point we had months of delay. He then came to us, asking to go back to the way we treated our case before. I know one of my colleagues got really annoyed by his behavior and is actively looking for another job. And we are still trying to get done with all the extra work already piled up, so I don't think he will be the last one. The last story is called I Warned You. I've moved into an apartment with a roommate last summer. When we first came in, the biggest part of the sale was the fact that the apartment was freshly renovated and soundproof. So when we got in, my roommate immediately fell in love with it, and I was too. When we moved in, we were very careful not to bother anyone, as we wanted to quickly have a good relationship with our neighbors, and we can safely say at work. What we did not know, however, is that we were only 3 renters when we first came in. Us on the floor, another family upstairs on the opposite side, and another one on the 3rd floor, with one empty apartment between us. Turns out the soundproof statement was accurate, but only in regards to the inside to outside situation. When our upstairs neighbors moved in, it was a nightmare. Sound from 5 AM to past midnight, 5 days in a row. Dropping stuff, speaking loudly, yelling or rocking in their apartment with shoes on. Out of frustration, on the 5th day, I walk upstairs and meet my neighbor at midnight. I asked him to cease the activities for the night. I have work in the morning and I cannot be kept up all night. I understand they were freshly moved in and they might have a tight schedule, but midnight was too late to be moving stuff. He didn't reply and closed the door on me. I go downstairs and the sound starts over again. I notify my landlord and he tells me he will handle it. He apologized for the situation, explaining to me my neighbor was just moving and that he probably didn't understand what I was saying because of a language barrier. The neighbors were extremely loud. There was no stop to the loud noises. It seemed like they couldn't be bothered to hold something without dropping it, jumping up and down on the floor or purposely banging the bed frame against the wall. I recorded the event and even installed microphones in my home jacked to my computer, activating and recording every time there is strong vibration in the house. There were around 100 events on a Monday. I was livid. I sent it to the landlord and explained that this cannot continue. First, the apartment was poorly soundproofed, which meant we were hearing every sound at all times. Second, we had notified the neighbors about the situation and they have ignored it. I have notified the landlord to awaken them to our situation. I report the issues several times and even advised my landlord that there were very heavy sounding farts coming from upstairs, which worried me. He answered with, "Stop complaining about your neighbors already. I have other things to do." I just said, "Understood, sir. Please be advised this will be my last communication and action to help you in that regard." As it turns out, our upstairs neighbor was doing bench press lifting in his living room. The heavy thuds I kept hearing was him dropping his weights on the ground. I had warned my roommate about removing anything she didn't want to be broken from the living room, and lo and behold, it happened. 4 days later, the first crack appeared, then another. The floor was giving up. I moved the couch out of the way and moved the TV and consoles into the bedroom. Fast forward to 3 days ago. After another series of loud bangs, I heard a loud crack, followed by screaming, followed by very loud noises. I went to the living room to see my neighbor on the ground. He was severely injured due to the fact he just went through the floor and brought his bench and weight rack with him. I called an ambulance and the police. The police asked me if I reported the issue to my landlord, which I could confirm due to my communications being made via email. I sent everything, and I am now, of course, filing to break my lease due to an uninhabitable dwelling. The landlord came in yesterday and just proceeded to explode. Told me I should have made him aware that my neighbor was doing dangerous things. To which I answered I had notified him about the very loud sounds and he never investigated. And he also ordered me to stop complaining about my neighbors. It was not my responsibility to go out of my way to protect his assets if he is unwilling to cooperate with me. My neighbors, roommate and I are now residing in a hotel until we can find a new place to live. We are now also looking towards adding a bit more salt to the injury by maybe filing for criminal negligence against both our landlord and the neighbor. The first because the apartment was apparently having some flaws, and the latter for endangering us. Anyway, it was a fun week. I do enjoy the accommodations of my hotel. Never went to a 4-star spa-included hotel before. Turns out the chocolate on the pillow is a lie, and I'm very disappointed about that. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories in today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.